All right, everyone, get ready because we are diving deep into this whole thing with Trump's tariffs and global trade.
Even the U.S. Postal Service is involved. We're going to try to untangle it all and see how these pieces all fit together.
Welcome to Logistics Pulse, sponsored by Mothership. Skip the broker to save big on LTL shipments, or deliver same day nationwide. For more insights like these, don't forget to subscribe to Logistics Pulse on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, so tariffs, they don't exactly make for like sparkling dinner conversation. You know what I mean?
Right.
But here's the thing. They kind of have this way of sneaking up on you in everyday life, That new phone that you've been wanting
Yeah.
or those imported shoes that you just love.
It's kind of like a giant interconnected web, you know? You tug on one little string over here, and it can send these ripples across the entire system.
Yeah, and what we're seeing right now is tariffs are back in a big way. And it's interesting because we're seeing echoes of moves we've seen before, but with some new twists, too. One name is dominating the headlines, and that is Trump. He is back in the trade game, and guess what his favorite tool is?
Tariffs, of course.
Tariffs.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how tariffs are being used, to kind of put pressure on other countries. It's not just about economics. It's this power play.
Yeah, it's like high-stakes poker,
Exactly.
but with entire economies
Oh.
on the line. And this isn't Trump's first time at the table.
No.
He used them a lot during his first term.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to dealing with China, Mexico, and Canada.
Right.
Can you remind us what happened back then?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, remember back in 2018, there was that whole thing about getting China to buy more American goods. They eventually made a deal, but
Well, things got kind of complicated.
But-
Right. China wasn't actually able to keep up their end of the bargain.
Yeah.
And it brings up this key point. Tariffs are often used as like this tool to try and reshape trading relationships, but it doesn't always work out the way it's planned.
That's true. And it's not just China, though, right?
Remember what happened with Canada and Mexico? The U.S. slapped tariffs on steel and aluminum to force them back to the negotiating table over NAFTA. And that one actually did lead to a new agreement.
The USMCA, which is the updated agreement we have in place today. But even with the USMCA, tensions are still there,
Yeah.
especially with Mexico.
And it's all tied to border security, isn't it?
Exactly. In 2019, Trump threatened to impose these escalating tariffs on all Mexican imports, unless they took stronger action on border security and migration.
Right.
Mexico did make some concessions,
Okay.
but those tariffs could always come back into play if things flare up again.
So it's a constant pressure point.
Like a trade-off. Yeah. So there are times when tariffs actually achieve what they set out to do. But what about this time around? I mean, we've got tariffs being proposed on Mexican and Canadian goods. So it's a proposed 25% on various goods, a 10% tariff on Canadian energy, and a 10% on Chinese imports. And I've even heard talk about potential tariffs on EU and South Korean goods. What's the game plan here?
Well, it seems like a multi-pronged approach, addressing different concerns: drug trafficking and border security, intellectual property disputes.
And reshaping global trade in a way that benefits American industries. This America First approach to trade policy.
But one immediate consequence we're already seeing is a surge in import activity.
So you mean like businesses are rushing to get their shipments in before those tariffs kick in and prices go up?
Exactly. It's a classic move.
Huh.
When there's this kind of uncertainty, everyone wants to beat the clock. And it's something we've seen time and time again in past trade cycles. One of the most immediate consequences of tariffs is this thing called an import surge.
Right.
Can you explain what that is and why it's happening?
Sure. An import surge happens when businesses try to bring in as many goods as possible before those new tariffs actually kick in and prices go up. It's like this mad dash.
I can just imagine the chaos at the ports. Ships lined up, containers piled high.
Exactly. It puts a huge strain on the entire system, from the
Yeah.
ports to the trucking companies to the warehouses.
Wow.
And it raises a lot of questions. Will this disruption be temporary, or will businesses need to completely rethink their supply chains? Maybe they'll need to start shifting production to other countries or find ways to stockpile more goods domestically
Right.
to avoid future tariff headaches. It's a lot to think about.
Wild to think that, something like a tariff can just throw the entire system into this like frenzy. It's like
Oh.
this chain reaction.
Absolutely.
Each link in the supply chain is just scrambling to adjust.
Yeah, and this ripple effect extends beyond just the immediate chaos at the ports. It's reshaping the entire landscape of U.S. imports, impacting everything from, infrastructure to regional economies.
That's right. It's not just about goods moving around. It's about the entire system.
Exactly.
With all this talk about tariffs and trade wars, Are there any strategies that businesses can use to navigate this? Is there a way to make their supply chains more resilient?
I mean,
Feels like we're living in this constant state of like trade whiplash, you know? Businesses think they've adapted to one change and then something else comes along and throws everything into like a loop again.
it definitely puts businesses to the test, but amidst all this uncertainty, there are strategies they can use
Okay.
to kind of build more resilience into their supply chains
Okay.
and not just, weather the storm, but come out stronger on the other side.
So let's dive into these strategies.
Yeah.
What can companies actually do to like prepare for this new era?
One key approach is diversification.
Okay.
We've already seen how companies are kind of shifting away from those congested West Coast ports,
Wow.
spreading their shipments across different entry points.
Uh-huh.
It's about not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. We always hear about those huge ports on the West Coast. Traditionally, most imports from Asia have come through major ports,
Okay.
like Los Angeles and Long Beach.
Uh-huh.
But now, with all this uncertainty and the desire to avoid those potential bottlenecks,
Yeah.
companies are diversifying their entry points.
Okay.
We're seeing increased traffic at Gulf Coast ports like Houston and New Orleans.
Wow.
Even East Coast ports like Savannah and Charleston are experiencing a surge in activity.
Spreading the risk, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But I imagine that adds like a whole new layer of complexity.
Yeah. This shift in import patterns puts immense pressure on the existing infrastructure. Ports need to expand their capacity, improve logistics, invest in technology to handle this increased volume. This could lead to job creation, in construction logistics, warehousing, all those sectors connected to port activity. But there's also a flip side.
What do you mean?
Well, the areas that are now seeing less traffic might face economic challenges.
Oh.
The ripple effect of these changes in global trade flows touches entire communities and regional economies.
So it's like the map of U.S. imports is being redrawn in real time. With all the congestion and backups at those traditional ports, even if it means things take a bit longer to ship, how do you manage all those different suppliers and shipping routes?
That's where technology comes in.
Okay.
Think of it like having this digital air traffic controller for your supply chain.
Oh, wow.
Sophisticated software can help businesses track inventory,
Right.
monitor shipments,
Uh-huh.
optimize logistics across multiple suppliers and locations. It's about having this clear view of the entire system,
Right.
being able to adapt quickly when those disruptions occur.
That's impressive. But even with like the best technology, relying on global suppliers means you're still exposed to those tariff risks.
Right.
Is there a way to reduce that exposure?
There is. Another powerful strategy is strengthening relationships with domestic suppliers.
Correct. So they're finding new places to make their stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
Essentially bringing some of that production closer to home.
So instead of relying on a factory halfway across the world, you might source materials or components from a supplier within the U.S.
Exactly.
Right.
Not only does this reduce reliance on international shipments and potential tariff headaches, but it can shorten lead times, improve responsiveness, and even enhance quality control. Plus, it supports local economies and creates jobs right here in the U.S.
But let's be realistic. Not everything can be made domestically. Some industries simply rely on specialized materials
Yeah.
or manufacturing processes
Right.
that are only available overseas.
That's true. And for those situations, companies need to think outside the box.
Oh, wow.
One option is strategic stockpiling.
Okay.
Imagine squirrels stashing away nuts for the winter,
Yeah.
except instead of acorns,
Yeah.
it's microchips and rare earth metal.
That's a great analogy. So instead of waiting until a shortage hits,
Right.
companies build up a reserve of those critical materials in advance.
Exactly. It's about anticipating those potential disruptions
Okay.
and taking steps to mitigate the impact.
And this actually reflects a broader trend. Companies are trying to make their supply chains more resilient, especially with all the uncertainty in the world right now, economically and geopolitically. Businesses want to safeguard their operations. Everyone's trying to stay one step ahead.
So we've got these big players like moving their pieces around on the global chessboard, using tariffs as their weapon of choice. But then we've got this unexpected twist. The U.S. Postal Service, first they said they were going to restrict small packages coming from China. But then they kind of backtracked. What's going on there, and why should we even care?
When the USPS first said they were going to restrict these packages, it sent shockwaves through the industry.
Wow. So it's not just about those big companies and massive shipments. Even these little technical details can have a huge impact on smaller businesses and everyday consumers.
For a lot of businesses, it all comes down to this thing called the Section 321 de minimis exemption.
It's a rule that allows duty-free entry for shipments under a certain value. It's a lifeline for a lot of e-commerce and keeps those affordable international fines coming to your doorstep.
Basically, it allows low-value shipments to enter the U.S. without having to pay any duties. And that's a huge deal for e-commerce businesses, especially those dealing with smaller products. If they change this exemption, it could drastically change costs and delivery times. This is about staying competitive, about being able to deliver goods affordably and efficiently.
So we've got these big trade wars and tariffs happening up here, and then this seemingly small postal regulation that could totally disrupt the whole world down here. So we've got tariffs reshaping those trade relationships, the USPS shaking things up with import regulations, and companies scrambling to adjust their supply chains. It's a lot to keep up with.
It really is. But understanding these dynamics is crucial. Whether you're a business owner trying to make sense of this crazy landscape, or just a consumer wondering why prices are going up, or why that thing you ordered online is taking forever to get to you, these global shifts have a real impact on all of us.
It really feels like we're watching this play out in real time, like a case study in how global events can directly impact businesses.
Yeah, and it's part of this bigger trend. Companies rely on predictable trade relationships, and all this back and forth can make it really hard to plan ahead.
It feels like we're at this turning point in global trade, where all those old assumptions about how things work are being challenged.
It's a reminder that global trade isn't just some abstract economic force.
It's about the things we buy, the prices we pay, even whether we can find certain products at all.
Exactly. It's about people and communities and their livelihoods. Think about your online shopping. Have you noticed any changes in shipping times or prices? It's very possible those are a direct result of the global trade dynamics we're talking about.
Sometimes a little patience goes a long way. If your online order takes a bit longer to arrive, it might be due to those supply chain shifts we've been discussing.
It's a good reminder that everything is connected.
Yeah.
Those global events we hear about on the news, they can have a very real impact.
Absolutely. And what about all the local businesses in our communities? Are they feeling the effects of all this too?
Absolutely. If a local shop relies on materials from overseas, they might be paying more for them because of tariffs. Or if they sell their products to other countries, they might be facing new trade barriers or logistical nightmares.
It really hits home how interconnected we all are. So it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet or strategies being cooked up in boardrooms.
Right. Tariffs touch everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. Every product we use, every item in our homes has a story.
Yeah.
A journey that spans continents and involves countless people and processes. The more we understand those forces, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the challenges and opportunities of the future.
This has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how global trade works and the impact it has.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Remember, the more you understand about this, the better prepared you'll be to make informed decisions, both as a consumer and as a participant in this global marketplace.
Well said. Thank you for joining us into the fascinating world of tariffs and global trade. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep questioning the world around you.
For more insights like these, don't forget to subscribe to Logistics Pulse on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.